Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael O'Reilly, the chairman of the Monroe Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome you all to the December 17th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm going to briefly read you the information regarding this remote electronic meeting. On March 14th, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in an effort to reduce the risk of transmission by virtual attendance at public meetings, Governor Lamont suspended in-person open meeting requirements and permits conducting public meetings remotely. Accordingly, the town of Monroe has selected GoToMeeting. This technology will permit up to 250 members of the public to participate. Any member of the public who desires to submit written information relative to the business set forth on this agenda may do so up to 1 hour in advance of the meeting. Notice is hereby giving that this public meeting shall permit the public to view or listen anonymously and, when permitted, participate in real time, be recorded and posted on the town's website within 7 days, and be made available to the public within a reasonable time. In addition to standard parliamentary procedure, following special rules shall apply. Please mute your microphone so as to reduce background noise at any time you're not speaking. Prior to speaking, and on each occasion, each speaker shall clearly state their name and title for the record, and the use of chat feature is prohibited. Everyone understand that? Then you'll have a roll call. Please just say here when I call your name. Bruno Maini.
Here.
Ryan Condon.
Here.
Leon Ambrosi.
I'm here, Mike.
Rob Westland. Ron Schneider.
I'm here.
Dominic Panici.
Here, Mike.
Nicole Lupo.
Here.
So give me
Rick
my
Schultz.
pen stuff.
Town Planner.
Rick, here.
Will Agresta.
Here.
And Georgia Contois.
Here.
And Sarah Stroud.
Here.
Did you include Nicole?
Also invited Barbara Schellenberg.
Here.
Thank you. Now,
Did we recognize Nicole? I didn't hear that. Nicole, did you say here?
I did. Yeah. Here.
So Robert's absent?
yes.
Okay.
So,
we need an alternative.
Ryan, do
Yeah,
we need who's on the list?
I believe it would be Nicole since she's not been seated yet.
That's correct.
All right, then we will seek Nicole Lupo. General public participation. Are there any members of the public here tonight that would like to address the commission with any questions or concerns regarding any issue that is not before the commission and is not likely to become before the commission in the near future? Are there any members of the public here tonight that would like to address the commission? Hearing none, we'll move on to public hearings. First public hearing, SCP 2020-04, file number 16248, 246 Main Street. Ryan, do you want to read the notices?
Yeah, the 246 Main Street. Okay.
246 Main Street should be the only notice.
Yep. Planning and Zoning Commission, Monroe, Connecticut, notice of public hearing to be held December 17th, 2020, in accordance with CGS 8-7D. A public hearing will be held on Thursday, December 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter via GoToMeeting at https://global.gotomeeting.com/join/258635909 with additional access by phone at 646-749-3122, access code 258635909, concerning the following. SEP 2020-04, file number 1624A, 246 Main Street, special exception permit application for proposed interior expansion of pre-existing non-conforming industrial manufacturing use, Biometrics NLE LLC, formerly Northeast Laser, by an additional 6,900 square feet, formerly occupied by a retail liquor store, resulting in total expansion of 89% of the permitted 100% expansion threshold per zoning 19.1C5, located at 246 Main Street, Assessors Map 26, Lot 17, located in a Business 2 district. A small unaffected portion of the site is zoned RF2 district. Biometrics NLE LLC, applicant DG Commercial LLC owner. Please check the Town of Monroe website for announcements of meeting cancellations, rescheduling, and for instructions for attending and or participating remotely or electronically. Complete details and copies of all related materials associated with the above matters are on file and available for viewing in the Monroe Planning and Zoning Department offices by appointment and on town's website at http://www.monroect.org/content/343/351/16794.aspx. Notice was published in Voices, and I don't have those dates.
Thank you,
Dates are gone.
Ryan.
Hold on. One sec. Oh, shoot. The dates were December 2nd and December 9th for the legal notice.
Thank you.
And Will, do you want to list the exhibits?
Yeah, 1 second. Come on, come on. Okay. Exhibit 1, site plan SEP application for 246 Main Street. Exhibit 2, project survey. Exhibit 3, site plan documents. Exhibit 4, ART Health Department memo. Exhibit 5, ART P&Z memo. And Exhibit 6, ART Town Engineer memo. And Exhibit 7, the green cards for public hearing. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Agresta. And for the applicant, we have Mr. Bjorklund, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. My name is Dave Bjorklund. I'm president of the firm of Scott Bjorklund Associates. We have offices in Monroe, and I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut. This is an application, as was stated in the notice, at 246 Main Street, and it's about as simple as they get. This is a application that has been triggered by an application that the commission just approved recently, which allowed Warehouse Wine and Liquors to move from 246 Main Street over to Century Plaza. That freed up about 9,000 square foot of space. The primary tenant in the building is what was formerly, the commission had addressed this application formerly as Northeast Laser. It has been merged with another company. They now refer to themselves as Biometrics NLE. And the proposal is very simple. Biometrics is proposing to occupy the space that was formerly occupied by the liquor store, which, as you can see from the schematic site plan, they, for the most part, they surrounded this on two sides. So it's a natural Northeast Laser. Ever since they They opened in Monroe years ago. They have been growing consistently, and this is just a natural move for them to move in and take this 9,000 square foot of space over. They currently occupy 18,000 square feet in the building. So as I said, it's a natural. We're not proposing any changes to the facade of the building. There are no requirements for any additional parking because they're not going to be adding any employees as a result of this. We have submitted to the health department what we call a B100 study, which examines the capacity of the septic system. That was requested by the health department, and it was submitted today. So this is really a simple, the liquor store moved out and Northeast Laser wants to move in. Northeast Laser is a little different as far as a tenant goes, is that they do perform manufacturing in a business zone, and the commission quite a while ago revised the regulations to permit them to occupy at a limited capacity in the business zone, and this brings them to 89% of the capacity that the commission outlined in their revisions to the regulations. So they're still below the 100,000 square foot threshold that the commission did originally permit them to occupy the building. So we're in compliance with the regulations, and this is it's another opportunity for a business born and bred in Monroe to expand yet again in Monroe and stay here and continue to be a significant employer. As I said, this is about as simple as it gets, except for the non-conforming aspect of the manufacturing in the business zone. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Dave Sippen, one of the principals in the LLC, is also with me tonight if you have any questions of Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Bjorklund. I'm going to poll the commissioners for questions. I'm starting with Commissioner Mayini,
I have no questions at this moment.
Commissioner Condon,
No questions.
Commissioner Ambrosi,
No questions.
Commissioner Lupo,
No questions at this moment.
Commissioner Schneider,
No questions.
and Commissioner Panici.
No question.
I have no questions. Anything from staff?
There is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
This is Will Agresta. There was, as Dave alluded to, comments from the health department. So they submitted the B100. Obviously, that should be incorporated in any approval to get confirmation that's okay. There is a memo from the town engineer. He had no comments. And there's a memo from me, which had 3 comments, which are mostly housekeeping things that could be conditions of approval. I also note on my memo, item 4, those are the determinations that the commission would have to make in granting the approval of the extension of the non-conforming use.
Thank you, Mr. Agresta. Are there any members of the public with us tonight that have any comments on this application? As this is a public hearing, are there any members of the public tonight with us that would like to comment on this application? If not, then back to Mr. Bjorklund. What do you want to do with this application at this point?
We would seek that the commission approve the application. I think it's very simple and straightforward. I have no additional comments. I don't believe Dave Sippen has any additional comments. And I've reviewed Will's comments and I agree with him that it's housekeeping. I would suggest that as far as the applicant is concerned, we're ready to close the hearing.
Okay, then we'll close the hearing at this point. Thank you all. There are several other public hearings tonight, most of which have been postponed. SCP 2020-05, correction, SCP 2020-02 has been postponed to 1/7/21. SCP 2020-01 has been postponed also to 1/7/21. ZCA 2020-03 has been postponed to 1/7/21. RAA 2020-04 has been postponed to 1/7/21, which brings us to the next public hearing, SDP 2020-01, file number 139, 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. Will, do you have any new exhibits?
Yes, give me 1 second.
I'm looking at the general regulation.
Okay, new exhibit 23, additional submission memo from applicant. 24, subsurface and stockpile report by WSP from the applicant. Exhibit 25, revised site plans from the applicant. 26, exhibit maps from the applicant. Exhibit 27, certified mail receipts from the applicant, which we did receive at the previous hearing. Exhibit 28 is, I believe, there's a town engineer memo, and a town engineer bond estimate, and following that is a planning and zoning staff memo as well. That is all.
Thank you, Will. And for the applicant, I believe we have Mr. Soley.
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Office is located right here in Monroe at 501 Main Street. So we're here tonight for the continuation of the public hearing for the site plan application at 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. Since the last hearing, we did submit some additional information, some very minor plan changes, really to reflect some comments from staff and as part of the Wetlands Commission. I'm happy to run through those with the commission this evening. We also provided for the commission's consideration an additional environmental assessment that was completed on the property, prepared by WSP and Derek Jones, the LEP. And I can touch on that a little bit as well. And we had previously submitted a hydrogeology report, which I think we touched on, but I'll probably just give a quick overview of that also. So, just to orient everyone again, this site is located up in the Pepper Street Business Park along the northern end of town. It's comprised of 2 parcels, 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence. We are proposing to construct a small building on the property and then import material to fill a deep hole that's been created by a previous property owner and restore a watershed to the wetland system along the eastern edge. I will say that we've completed our wetland hearings. Last night we had a meeting and they closed the public hearings. They're going into deliberations, and we hope to get a positive response from them soon as they can deliberate. But obviously we know that this commission needs a report from them before they can act. So one of the things that we submitted at the last hearing was a comprehensive report from Derek Jones, the LEP. And there's been a lot of questions and concerns about the property, and there's been some historic import materials brought to the property. Part of our actual response, last response letter to the commission dated December 8th, a number of the commissioners expressed some questions and concerns about some quantities of yardage. And so we were able to go back through some records and do some earthwork calculations based on historic surveys taken throughout the duration and different snapshot time, and then based on other information available to us. So our estimation is that there's been a total of 2,460,000 cubic yards excavated at the property. Of that, there's approximately 372,900 cubic yards stockpiled or placed on site, and of that stockpiled or placed material, approximately 84,000 cubic yards, 84,900 cubic yards has been imported to the property. In previous submissions, we provided a number of material manifests and testing information regarding that material that was imported to the property. And there was still a lot of concern about it. You know, there was all kinds of claims and assertions that it was environmentally impacted. It was causing undue harm to the environment and surrounding natural resources. So we did engage, the applicant engaged WSP and Derek Jones, a licensed environmental professional, to do a comprehensive analysis of the site. And what he did is he came in and he did a series of both superficial and deep tests across the property, a number of borings in the area where some material has been stockpiled or imported. In addition to the material samples, they also sampled groundwater wells and surface water. And what he concluded was that there was no environmental contamination on the property, and there's been no evidence of any undue harm or contamination throughout the property. These are just some of the soil analytical data results from the various tests, and they did deep borings as well to get all the way down to bedrock to refusal, to ensure that they had a good comprehensive understanding of the existing material on the site. In addition to that, the surface water analysis also came in without any impacts from an environmental standpoint, and included in the groundwater analytical data as well. So again, for that conclusion, they did not identify conditions at the site that are indicative of the presence of a source or of contamination to groundwater, or thereby the on-site wetlands. Evidence of the presence of contaminated materials was not identified within discrete stockpiles. In addition, the stormwater and groundwater fed surface water body at the site did not exhibit any evidence of impacts. So we wanted to make sure that there was an exhaustive study and analysis submitted to the commissions for their consideration, and we think that this is the analysis investigation completed is more than adequate to verify that the site is clean. Again, just for the commission's consideration, I believe Jane Warren, an environmental attorney, is on the line as well, and she could answer any questions related to that if the commission may have it. I don't believe Derek is on or was available this evening, but if the commission does have any other questions, we can certainly have them available at an upcoming meeting. In addition to that, we had provided obviously the hydrogeologic report. There was some concern about potential impacts to groundwater, but also impacts to the groundwater fed wetlands to the eastern side of the site. They did an analysis, and they were able to install a number of wells and piezometers within those wetlands. And based on their investigation, they concluded that the activities on the property on 4 Independence and 64 Cambridge Drive did not impact the deeper bedrock groundwater or surface groundwater that is attributed to these wetlands on the eastern side of the site. So we submitted some revised plans. Again, the changes were very, very minor in nature, primarily based on some of the discussions during the wetland hearings. I'll go through them very quickly. We added some Cape Cod curbing to the site as you drive into the proposed office building located in the front of the site. We made some revisions to the proposed impervious liner that's to be installed in the area of fill where we're restoring the watershed to these wetland systems. What we've done is we've changed some of the specifications so that we're proposing that liner to be placed 3 feet from finished grade in the area of the vernal pool envelope and the extensive buffer plantings we're proposing here, and that would only be filled above that liner with natural material. And then the liner is still 6 feet deep as you travel westward from that limit it would still be 6 feet deep here, and then you'd be able to use clean fill above that liner with topsoil as a finishing surface for that. We also made some revisions in that our previous plans and applications had identified that we were, these are just the blow-ups of those plans showing those changes to that liner limit and the fill associated with it. We also made some changes to the plans as previous application materials had shown that we were identifying some soil erosion sediment control basins throughout the site, throughout the various phases, and we were going to be dewatering from those basins to rehydrate the wetland during the earlier phases of construction up until the watershed can actually be reestablished. Through our discussions with the Wetlands Commission, we've revised that plan. We're now going to be rehydrating these wetlands through pumping of a bedrock groundwater well, which is located in this location here in the south west corner of the site. So we did make those revisions, and we identified that, how that would be hydrated and fed throughout the duration of construction. You can see here, we just show that 2-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe, which would come through and provide that hydration in that new location here to rehydrate that well. So that was another change that we had made based on discussions with the Wetlands Commission. And those are just reflected through the various phases of the SEC plans. This is the second phase of those plans, which we've gone through at length at previous hearings. We made some additional revisions to the landscape plans. Let me just keep going through here. Some of the concerns, there was some clearing done to the northern part of the site in this location here, north of Wetland 3. What we've done is we've revised that. We revised our planting plan, our landscape plan, to include additional plantings. You can see this is our formerly proposed plan. We've revised that to provide additional plantings to the north of that to essentially fill in an area that was cleared as part of a previous application, and kind of restore some deciduous trees and some cover there to provide to kind of restore this entire area to the maximum extent practical. We have the Cape Cod curbing detail, which has been added to the detail sheets, and some revisions to the liner as well. We've also eliminated, per the request of some of the commissioners, we've eliminated the possibility for this liner to be 40 mil poly. They preferred to have that liner be just a clay or a mix of, a combination of bentonite clay mixed with natural material. And that would serve as that future liner within that area, as I talked about before, within the proposed watershed restoration area. In addition to that, we also provided a new exhibit as part of our application with wetlands, part of the proposed restoration and remediation for the prior activities. We have proposed to place a conservation easement over the property. That conservation easement is primarily over the existing wetland edge, but it also extends beyond those wetland limits to include essentially the limit of all of our proposed upland plantings. And that's pretty extensive. It includes, not only a significant amount of wetland area, but also a lot of upland area as well. So we feel that's a considerable protection measures that we can put in place to provide future protection to those natural resources on the property. We also provided the wetland chair had asked for just a section showing the existing grade today, the former grade, and then the previously approved grade as part of the approvals in 2006. So we provided another exhibit which just shows that area. So you can see here, this is the former grade. This was the 2006 proposed or approved elevation to be excavated to, and then this is the existing grade. It's much more prevalent. This is the southern section of the site through here. On the northern section, you can see, again, the former grade, the 2006 approved grade, and now the current grade. And I think we've gone through this through a number of different figures and exhibits during the presentation. But it was something we provided the Wetlands Commission. We wanted to make sure this commission had it as well. We also received some additional comments from Scott towards the end of last week, and some additional comments from Will, I believe, yesterday. We will be preparing a formal response to that, well in advance of the next meeting. We've been at this for quite some time, and we certainly appreciate the commission's patience and working with us through this application. And at that time, at this time, I think that's a summary of the additional information submitted, and we'd be happy to kind of answer any additional questions the commission may have. I know you had asked about some of those earthwork quantities. We tried to provide those, and obviously provide a little bit more summary of the environmental testing on the site. So we'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Solly. I'm going to poll the commissioners at this point for any additional questions. Start with Commissioner Maini.
At this moment, I want to wait 1 second. So,
We'll get back to you tonight then.
yes.
Okay, Commissioner Condon.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lupo.
No questions at this moment.
Commissioner Ambrosi.
Yeah, I have questions.
Go right ahead.
Kevin Solly, how many yards was removed out of there? You said 2 point what?
Well, based on, so what we did is we went back and looked at the former grades, and then we went through and looked at some of the surveys that we had conducted throughout the duration of the operation and activity. And we believe there's approximately, pull that number up again. Approximately 2,460,000 cubic yards have been excavated at the property. And there's currently approximately 372,900 cubic yards of material that are either stockpiled or placed on the property. And what we did is to look at that.
What material is that consist of?
It's on-site native material, overburden, the material that, overburden material that was above the rock and stockpiled prior to the rock processing operation or the rock blasting operation. Quarry screenings is native material, so that is on site. That's a byproduct of the crushing operation. And I believe there's some topsoil stockpiled as well. And then there's also, again, as we indicated, some material that's been imported to the site, approximately 84,900 cubic yards, which is also on the site as well.
And does that material you're talking about consist of stone dust?
Yes, that's quarry screenings. Yes, that's correct.
Right, so it's basically stone dust. And how much of that do you have on that property?
I don't have that breakout. I don't have that exact number for you right now. I could certainly provide it. I think it's probably about 150,000 yards, maybe 170,000 yards.
Yeah, I'd like to get that number if you could get it for me. All right, let's move on because I have a lot of questions to ask you.
Sure.
When you did the borings, where did you do the borings on this property?
Sure, let me show you that figure from WSP. So they did a number of borings through here and then along this eastern edge, or excuse me, this western edge. This is so let me give you some history in terms of how the site was excavated over the years. So what they did is when they started the operation, obviously they kind of started from Cambridge Drive and they started to march their way north. And the larger portion of the site in this area here, this was where the former crushing plant was operating. And this was approximately elevation 430, 428, somewhere in that range, 434. And then once they got to here and they started going through this narrow band as they went north, they essentially went from that 430 elevation and they started to slowly march backwards. And they went a little bit deeper as they went until they hit about this location where they went to about elevation 410, 411. And then once they hit this elevation, that's when they went deeper. And I think the deepest point of the site towards the north is about 382 at its lowest elevation. So what we were able to do is we had a couple different survey snapshots from 2015 and I think 2016, which basically showed they ended up going from this elevation to, like I said, 430 down to about 410. So this was a gradual slope, essentially again, from 430 to 410. So what we did is we were able to determine what we believe the bottom of the excavation was. We compared that to the former grades, and that's how we were able to calculate that 2,460,000 yard number of total excavation. So then some of that material, the native material that was placed through here, this was native overburden and screenings. We have another large pile of screenings here. And then the material that was imported, or some of the material that was imported, was placed, this mixed debris in this area here. And this is where the primary borings were conducted. And you can see those borings were essentially drilled down to bedrock. And those elevations matched what we used for our calculations to basically establish that they went down an elevation of about 410. So that's how the site was essentially operated, and this is where all that investigation was, all the way down to bedrock, to refusal.
So how deep were those? Do you know what the depth of all those borings were?
I want to say, I mean, we could look at the. I want to say maybe 30 to 40 feet. Sorry about that.
So how many, can you give me an answer, how much material have you already put into these holes?
Again, approximately, as we stated, approximately 84,900 cubic yards have been imported to the property.
That's already.
And we provided. Yes, that's been imported to the property. So that's we basically, again, what we looked at. So then we looked at the existing grades that are out there, which obviously reflect this material that's been placed and stockpiled, and that's that 84, and that's that 372,900 cubic yard number. And then of all the material that was imported, based on all the records available, that's that 84,900 cubic yards of import material. And we provided the manifests and the testing for all of that material as part of our, one of the previous submissions.
But wasn't there, so you're telling me that all native material is put down on the other end over there where those big holes used to be?
Some native material, but then also some mixed debris, as I said. And all that material was tested and it's come back clean.
We did borings.
Yes, they did.
And how deep were they?
Yes. To bedrock, to refusal.
Bedrock? Are those ones on the bottom?
Yes. All of these were drilled down.
I thought I saw something that said 5 feet or 6 feet. That's not.
So those were, there were actually two sets of investigations that were submitted. There was an initial analysis that was submitted that was just superficial samples with shallow excavations. Then a supplemental analysis was conducted where they did deeper borings all the way down to refusal. And that was the latest report that we submitted on December 8th. And that was kind of shown through here where all those borings were, and they all went down to all the depth of all material that was placed in those locations.
Okay. All right. So and I just ask you these questions because I need to know for myself because it's in a GAA site. So
absolutely.
How do you plan on filling the hole? I mean, what is your plan? I understand that you want to use the definition of clean fill from deep.
Mm-hmm.
Have we reached out to Deep? Have we talked to Deep at all about this in a GAA site?
Deep has been contacted multiple times by multiple different concerned parties. There's been several complaints made with Deep through all of their different divisions. They've all come to the site. They've all inspected the site. They've all determined that there's no actionable items required. We also provided, I believe, our report to Deep. They're well aware of the application. They're well aware of what's being proposed here. And again, DEP, their definition of clean fill is broad, and I want to say that for the record. And I want to also point out that our proposed application and the material intake protocol that we've submitted for the record actually restricts that definition. So we're not looking to use the third part of that clean fill definition includes polluted soil. We're not proposing the import of any of that material. We want to only use natural materials, or materials that would come through the building demolition debris process. But one of the other things that we're proposing is that we're proposing to use only native material to the site to be filled, or natural material to the site. So not clean fill, but native natural material to be filled up to elevation 411, I believe, which is essentially the deepest part to which that would actually get us up and out of groundwater. And then we would actually place a filter fabric above that, and then place with clean fill from that elevation up to the proposed finished grade.
So your native material consists of what? Stone dust?
An overburden.
Or does it?
Yeah.
Overburden, which is stone dust, right?
No, overburden is the natural glacial till material.
It includes. Does it include stone dust?
Well, from a definition standpoint, no. Overburden and stone dust are not the same thing. So when I say overburden, I'm not saying stone dust. I'm saying overburden.
Well, no, you have stone dust on the property right now, no? You have 170.
Yes, there's stone dust.
1,000 yards of that, right?
It's actually, I was able to just pull that up. It's actually 118,000 cubic yards of stone dust.
118,000?
Yes.
Excuse, Leon, 1 second, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kev, can you explain to me what overburden is? Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sure. So when you dig down in the ground, everything above bedrock would be considered overburden.
Okay, thank you.
So you basically plan on filling this hole with some stone dust, right?
We may use some of it, but also the existing, overburden natural material that is on the property.
Okay. You're talking about that liner. Can you elaborate on that liner for me a little bit?
Sure. So through, as the primary goal of this application is really to restore that watershed, we wanted to make sure that once we get to these finished grades from an elevation standpoint, that any rain that falls within this watershed area that's going to contribute to this easterly wetland system is actually going to get to that wetland system. So what we've identified is that within this area, this proposed watershed area, we would place a layer of impermeable material, so a clay material that meets a certain fine content, so that when it rains, the water won't percolate down through that liner. It's going to really mimic the former what bedrock did previously. Water would run down, it would hit an impervious layer an impervious layer, and then it would run along that layer down towards the easterly wetland system. So we're basically proposing that impervious liner, a 6-inch thick liner, that would, so when rain does fall, it hits that liner and then it runs along that impervious layer, and it would follow all the way towards this, follow that same pattern as previous to get over to this easterly wetland system.
And what's the grade of those wetlands up there?
These are at approximately, I want to say, I'm sorry, I don't have all my, actually, you know what? I can pull it from, 1 second. So the existing wetlands, the existing wetlands themselves are about 450 to 452, but that existing area through there, it comes up, and there's an area that's adjacent to the wetland that hasn't been disturbed, and those grades range roughly about 455 or so. So that's really our starting point that we can grade up. 455.
Okay. And that's what you're trying to grade up to now?
That's our starting point, and then we have to come up from there.
Okay.
Yeah, let me show you how our exhibits, which probably show it better. Our sections. I don't have those sections in this presentation. So yeah, but that's where we're coming from.
So
Yeah,
the question, I was reading some of Will's comments too. I don't know, we could probably address those later. I don't know if Mike is going to let us address those later, but why do you just come in for a fill permit first to take care of the violation and then come in with a site plan?
well, it was the duration of the fill permit. Your current regulations allow that fill permits can only be granted for 2-year period.
Right.
And it's just frankly not possible to source and place 980,000 yards of material in a 2-year period.
Oh, okay. And so the other question I had to ask you, and that's, so when you import this material, this clean fill material, what are you going to do with it? You're going to process it on the site?
Yes, and that's part of that's included in the application materials. And actually, our phase soil erosion sediment control plans identify where that processing would take place during each phase. During phase 1, we show a material processing area and then intake bins for that material to be stockpiled and inspected and tested in accordance with our QA/QC procedures to ensure that any material obviously meets those definitions, can be verified as such before it would be actually used and placed as fill.
Okay, and then what happens to the other material?
It would be removed from the site.
And what would that material be?
Well, if any material didn't meet the criteria for the fill permit, that would be immediately rejected. If something got on site and then it was identified to be, unusable for fill, it would be the obligation of the person who brought it to come and get it.
So basically, you're going to recycle the material, and whatever is good, you're going to put in there, and whatever that you don't use, you're going to get rid of. Either sell it or dispose of it somewhere else.
Well, this isn't, we wouldn't, if any material wouldn't be usable to be placed in fill, it wouldn't really have a lot of value to be sold.
So you're going to recycle it.
We're not looking to be a recycling facility. We're not proposing to bring in material, process it, and then export it.
If you bring in block, or you bring in concrete block and it has rebar in it, okay? You gotta break it up,
that would
take
be
the rebar out of it, and then you're gonna sell off the rebar or whatever, because that's gonna be a metal product. So basically you're doing a recycling, because you're gonna take out the one thing and you're gonna sell the other stuff. Basically, that's what it really comes down to, because that's, because it's not all the fill that you're gonna bring in there is not gonna meet Deep's definition that what they have there, unless you process it on the property, right?
We would have to process it just to put it into a suitable form that it can actually be placed and used as fill.
I know, but I want to be very clear on this, because I don't want this to get into a recycling place for 10 years that where you're gonna process material, and then we approve this and we end up having a recycling facility in our town that we don't have a regulation for it right now.
Totally understand that, and we're not proposing to, I think what you're thinking of a recycling facility, at least in my mind, that would be something where, you can actually come in and you can buy that aggregate. You can recycle it, and then someone can come in and say, okay, I want that pile of processed, processed concrete or something like that. That's not the intent of this application. That's not the intent of this applicant.
But there's all kinds of recyclers. Recyclers that take out, the good stuff, or the stuff that you're going to use to fill the hole, and then you're going to have byproduct of metal or whatever it is, and that's going to be taken off the property, either sold or brought somewhere else, because you can't put that into the hole anyway. But basically, that's what it's going to come down to. So I just wanted to be pretty much clear on that. And so, so you're telling me that you got 370,000 yards of material on the property right now, right?
Yes, that's how much material is kind of stockpiled above, bedrock.
Right. And you imported 84,000 yards is what you said, right?
The previous owner, and yes,
And has this owner imported any?
I think some material may have come onto the property under the current ownership.
And how much was that?
I don't know that exact figure.
And you didn't put that into your calculation?
It's part of, oh yes, that 84,000 is a total material imported. I just don't have the differential between what was done previously, pre and post May of last year.
Hey, Kev, it's Bruno. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, John. But I thought Stratford High School was at the quarry.
It is.
How
that
many
came-
thousand
That's
yards was
part of that. That's part of that 84,000 yards of material, and that's actually a good. I'm glad you brought that up, Bruno, because that's actually a good example where so there's a large pile here, which was the demolition of Stratford High School. So that demolition debris meets the definition of clean fill. It has to be processed, obviously, in order to be placed as structural fill, but it does meet the definition of clean fill. So that the importing of that demolition debris wasn't a recycling operation. It was a source of fill material to fill this hole. Now, that was imported to the property prior to the current ownership. That was done before the applicant took ownership of the property. But that is here, and that is part of the material that was tested, and we provided manifest to that. We provided all the pre-demolition hazardous materials abatement that was done prior to that building being demolished. But that is something that would come in. And that's actually a good source of clean fill to fix the issue, to address the scar that's been made on the land, so we can get this back to a higher performing piece of property in the community.
Now, that was done under the previous ownership or current ownership?
Previous ownership.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Leon.
In that stockpile there, what does the material consist of in that stockpile right now? That stockpile has to be processed?
It does. There's some I think there might be a little bit of rebar in there that's got to get picked out. The whole area has to be processed and filled before it can be formally placed.
And was that soil tested?
Yes, it was.
And so you would know what was in it?
Yes, you can.
Rebar.
You can see all these boring locations here. That's all where Stratford High School sits today.
And so you'd have to dig all that out of there and then reprocess it and then put it in the hole.
Yes.
Right. There was asphalt in that
Properly
property.
placed.
Where'd that go?
I'm sorry. The asphalt?
There was a bunch of asphalt on that property. Where did all that go?
That's all still here. There's a stockpile here, and there's a stockpile, I believe, here. That's all still there. That's not being proposed to be placed in the hole. We're not proposing to place any asphalt. Even though DEP defines asphalt fragments greater than 4 inches as clean fill, we're not proposing to use any of that as a source of fill material. The asphalt that is on here would be it can be used as road-based material. As part of like a finished product here, or it would be exported from the site.
Okay. Has any of that asphalt been put in any of those holes?
No.
No, or
There hasn't been any wholesale asphalt fill, to my knowledge.
So where did that asphalt come from?
I think it was imported as part of, listen, there was a lot of stuff imported here under the previous ownership. I can't tell you exactly, where and who and when. I know it's there today.
So you don't know if there's any asphalt put in any of those holes?
I don't believe so. There's been, we've probably, I think WSP did a very thorough and comprehensive job of testing the materials. In an LEP, for an LEP to put his name on a report and to provide his, license and certification up to say that there's been no evidence that he could find of any, contamination or anything like that, that's a substantive thing. It means a lot. I mean, DEP essentially delegates their activity and oversight to LEPs, so it's not something to be taken lightly.
Okay. No, because I mean, I seen some other holes in here that I don't see any that were, no testing was done in those. Did you see all those pictures before that were, I seen like humongous holes in this property, and then where you're showing this testing doesn't look like it went to where those holes were. There's some bigger holes that were in that property. Like where, if you look from up top and you come down on the right-hand side along that whole area, that I think at one time was filled.
Well, this is actually the edge of that
Okay.
excavation.
Now come down, go to the right more. The other way.
In here?
No, the other way. My map is different than yours. Go, keep going. And come down. Keep coming down. Right in there. What was there? No, up more. Up a little bit more. Right there. What was there?
Native overburden and screenings.
But there was a huge hole here. Was there any testing done here?
Yes, there was, but this is all
It
native
doesn't show
overburden and
before.
screening. This was all native materials.
This is, so there was testing done there? It doesn't show it.
Yeah,
because
there
your
was some,
map- There's like, I see all the
Well-
black dots and it doesn't show anything being tested there.
there was superficial samples taken here. It's all native material.
Was there borings here?
I'd have to go back and look at the WSP report to see if additional investigation was done on that side.
But am I not mistaken? Wasn't there holes here?
No.
There was some-
This area, as I stated before, this whole area from here, essentially back to here, this was all excavated to about, the same grade, elevation approximately 410 to 415 and all. So yeah, there was stockpiled material here that was all kind of native overburden and screening. So yes, there was material placed there.
But we didn't do any borings here?
It was all overburden. It's all native material. And I think
how do
part
we
of the
know
WSP investigation was
I
deeper.
understand.
Well, there was part of the
How do
LEP
you know?
oversight. They did deeper test holes through there, and it was all
I see,
uniform.
But those were some pretty deep holes. How do we know what is underneath there and what is on top of it? We wouldn't know that. So
Oh,
those were-
the LEP, the LEP took samples 16 feet down in that area. They came in with a backhoe and an excavator, and they dug down
deep?
approximately 16 feet
how deep were
below
those
grade.
How deep were
Probably
they?
about that.
Can I interject maybe to help to shed some light on this? This is Attorney Jane Warren, attorney for the applicant Environmental Council.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin's answered already that there were 31 soil borings taken all the way down to bedrock. In addition, there were 3 groundwater monitoring wells, I think you can see on this figure. And the groundwater monitor wells are on the down gradient side of the property. So the soil all was sampled clean, the surface water was clean, the superficial soil was clean, and the deep soil was clean. And to the extent that there might have been anything that was missed, the groundwater wells at the bottom there of the property that you see on the map there, they're going to pick up any contamination, if there were any, that had seeped into the groundwater. And nothing was found. Everything is in compliance. There's no evidence of any contamination on this site. So I hope that helps.
This
Well,
is Evan Glass. Can I shed some light on this as well?
Who are you?
I am the LEP for the intervener.
Can you just identify yourself, please? And
Yes, my name is Evan Glass. I am the LEP with Alta Environmental Corporation in Colchester, Connecticut, and I'm here representing the intervener. And I have just 2 quick things to say about what was just said. May I?
I'll
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
Mr. Soley had indicated that there was no asphalt buried at the site. And I think if you look at WSP boring B1, which I think was the deepest boring, at the very bottom of that deepest boring, in the water table, apparently, because those samples, those last 2 samples were wet, it's described as as having asphalt and brick. So there is asphalt buried, and it is apparently in the water table in the deepest part of boring B1. And maybe Kevin, you can point on this figure to where boring B1 is.
I think B1 is somewhere in this area, and let me clarify my statement. I said there's been no wholesale asphalt used as fill. There may have been an errant asphalt particle somewhere, which may have been picked up in a boring, but there hasn't been any wholesale asphalt used as fill material on the property.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. You also indicated that the soil testing indicated there was no contamination of the soil found, and that's imprecise because obviously you know that lead was found in one sample exceeding standards, and other analytes were found over background concentrations, and that means there is contamination there. Sometimes contamination's over standards, sometimes it's not over standards, but it's imprecise to say that there's not any contamination. There is contamination, and there's so far just been one sample within the
This is the longest committee reports ever. So I will have one for Alliance.
Okay, Mr. Solly, do you want to address that issue of contamination?
That might be best for Jane to respond to, but I believe that the DEP allows for, when you're looking at samples, there may be an error, something that comes up, but Mr. Glass, doesn't the DEP look at lead for averaging across multiple samples?
Yes, you were able
This is Jane Warren. I can address this. Evan,
statistically, you weren't exceeding a standard, but that's different than saying there's no contamination.
all right,
Contamination
Evan,
is what you're talking about.
Evan, there's no contamination above the state's remediation standard regulations. There is no contamination exceeding standards. The site is in compliance with the DEP's remediation standard regulations, which don't even apply to this site, okay?
Well, that was not what Mr. Solly was
I
telling
have
the
just
commission.
clarified what I said. There is no contamination
There was
exceeding
no contamination at all, and
standards,
that's not
Evan.
the case. There actually was an exceedance that they had to go back and get extra samples for.
Evan, is 95 confidence level testing allowed under the RSRs?
Of course it is.
Thank you very
That's
much.
not what Mr. Solly was saying until now we brought that to light. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Glass?
Complies with standards, Evan.
About the groundwater wells.
Excuse me, the two of you, excuse me, this is Bruno Maini. Excuse me, can we have one person at a time? I feel like I'm at the first Trump-Biden debate. One at a time, please.
Okay, may I finish my last comment?
Mr. Glass, this is Chairman O'Reilly. I think they've addressed your comment sufficiently, and they did maybe misstate, but I believe that was addressed.
Yes, it was. I have another topic, very short.
All right, then go ahead with your question, and then please allow for an answer.
Thank you. It is the location of the monitoring wells are the blue dots in the southwest part of this site, and the focus of the testing obviously was about 1,000 feet north of that. That's a very long distance to expect to find a plume from. Obviously, if you really wanted to find out if there was contaminated groundwater resulting from the fill, you'd put a monitoring well where the fill is, not 1,000 feet to the south. And the most routinely used tool to show whether wells are down gradient of a potential pollution source is to prepare contour maps, groundwater contour maps that show the direction of groundwater flow. And I don't believe WSP prepared any contour maps. That is my comment. Thank you.
I would just point Mr. Glass to the hydrogeology report because that did prepare contour maps. So I think if Mr. Glass would review the record in its entirety and all the information provided,
I apologize
it is there.
It's possible for you to bring them up.
Evan, we have more than one of those reports. Do you know which one it is specifically?
The hydrogeology report?
I think we have
There's a
two,
big
don't
file,
we?
and if I missed it, then that's the case.
And then just in addition too, I just want to point out that while Mr. Glass is, statement about the location of the wells, we wanted to test the groundwater. We wanted to understand if the groundwater was contaminated, but we also wanted to test the surface water. So all of this material that's here, would, superficially water would come in, it would seep through, it would get to this surface water, and the surface water was also tested, and it was not in any exceedances. And listen, I'm a professional engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I'm not a licensed environmental professional. So if I misspoke, I certainly apologize for that. And I'll probably defer to Ms. Warren for, future environmental discussions. But that surface water was also tested, and it was also within.
This is Jane Warren, for the record. I think that I'm not a licensed environmental professional. I'm an environmental attorney of 35 years, and I think this is probably something that the commission doesn't even need to be that concerned with. I'll address Evan's point, Mr. Glass's point, that there would be no reason for us to put a groundwater well underneath or adjacent to a stockpile or a soil area that had already been tested and come out clean. And so the idea was to test the soil and then to test down gradient to make sure that nothing had been missed in the soil sampling. At any rate, this is an issue for DEEP. DEEP is well aware of this site, and the soil and the groundwater have been tested. The site is in compliance with the remediation standard regulations, as I stated before. And I don't think that we need to take a whole lot more of the commission's time on this issue when you have other issues that you can be addressing. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Commissioner Ambrosi to finish his comments.
Right. Well, you were answering my question, and he just enlightened on my question. And so basically, from what I understand now, because he's a hydrologist, I guess, I would imagine, Glass, he's a hydrologist.
I'm a geologist and a hydrogeologist.
Hydrogeologist. So I would imagine that I would like to know if there's contamination on in these fill sites, how long does that take for it to travel? Does it take years? Does it take months? Does it take 10 days? You're saying that the groundwater gets in there, it goes through there, and then it goes down to those wells. How long does that take to travel? Does anybody have that answer? If there was a contaminated piece on this site, how long would it take for that to travel into groundwater?
Go ahead, Mr. Glass.
Thank you. It could take varying amounts of time depending upon the hydraulic gradient, depending upon the permeability of the materials. And this is a very complex question for this site because of the bedrock. One of those two wells that was tested so far away from the primary fill area was a bedrock well. And bedrock water flows to bedrock wells like a pipe flow. It's only, the water only flows in fractures. And the fractures from a pollutant source can miss a bedrock well and then find another bedrock well a mile down gradient. I've seen that happen many, many times. So bedrock's very complicated. It's hit or miss in terms of finding a plume. So the answer to your question is that it varies. And I think it's up to the applicant to make that demonstration that the wells that they are using to represent the fill quality's potential for impact, that they make the case with calculations showing that enough time has gone by and enough wells have been tested and that those wells are in the right place. And I don't think they've made that case yet.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Commissioner Ambrosi, do you have any other questions?
No. Well, I think that maybe our commission should hire our own professional so that we can get these answers, these questions, because I have no clue about all this stuff. I have no clue. And like he just said, there is contaminants in there, but it's below the standards, and they change standards all the time. And we know that this is in a GAA site, but standards, change all the time, and then some get restricted more, and then some, but I just need to know that we're doing the right thing in a GAA site, because this is the people's drinking water for wells in this town. Because this is definitely in the groundwater. It'd be a different thing if it wasn't, but it is.
Thank you, Mr. Ambrosi.
I just like to offer that the Wetlands Commission did engage a hydrogeologist and LEP, a gentleman by the name of Russ Dorenzo with Arcadis, and he said on the record several times that the testing on the site was sufficient, and that Derek Jones is a well-respected LEP, and WSP is a well-respected firm, and that he didn't see any evidence or any concerns. I know that he is not a consultant hired by this commission, but he was hired by the town of Monroe through the Wetlands Commission, and he did provide that, testimony into the record of the wetlands hearings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Solly. So I have a couple of questions. Most of my concerns have been delineated in Mr. Agresta's questions, and I know you're going to address them offline and come back with responses to those questions, correct? At the next meeting. I'd just like to point out a couple of things that I think that you should concentrate on, at least for me. One thing that's a little bit confusing for me is the whether this is the correct type of application. And mixed in with that question is, what is the principal use for this application? And what are the other uses going to be? Especially that many of the uses that you've alluded to are not permitted in the I-2 district. Are we going to have to look at zone changes here or overlays? I'd just like to take a couple of steps back and not spend so much time looking at the groundwater and looking at maybe the whole idea of how we're approaching this. Is want to make sure it's correct.
Yeah, I can comment on that. We had we did a pre-application meeting with staff. We also then had a subsequent pre-application meeting with Mr. Karp, and I came in and met with Will and Rick. The commission has the ability to approve grading associated with the site plan application. The commission also has the ability through state statutes to grant a permit for up to 10 years. That's what our attorney has concluded based on his evidence. And I think Barbara Schellenberg, the town's attorney, has also had some discussion regarding that with wetlands. It's an interpretation of the law and statutes. So under the regulations, the commission has the ability to grant grading and earthwork associated with the site plan application, and that has duration. A fill permit application can only be granted for 2 years. And with the remediation that was required to address the wetland violation, we needed to import a considerable amount of material, and it was going to take more than 2 years to import and place that material. So we couldn't have made an application to wetlands that included this much fill and then come to planning and zoning only to have 2 years to place that fill. And under the current regulations, that was the only way to do it if we were to apply for a fill permit. So the only alternative to that, using the regulations that this commission has, would be to apply for a site plan application with grading associated with it. This application has been contentious from day one because there's an abutting property owner who resides in California who has filed complaints with everyone and anyone, and has filed multiple repeated and incessant emails to town staff, to DEP, to Aquarian, to everyone. And we know that applicant, that same property owner, has also been an intervener in this application and the Wetlands Commission application. Now, if we were to break these out into separate applications, we would then have an intervener with attached to every application that we make. And all that would do would waste your time and our time and their time and an incredible amount of money. We tried to streamline this to have the Wetlands Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission have to deal with this issue once. We then looked at the regulations. We determined how we could do that in the most efficient way possible. And this was the way to do that. There are a bunch of different ways we could have tried to approach it, but the other ways and the other mechanisms didn't work for what was required to get this project done. That's why we chose this path. And we reviewed this with staff several times, you know, and I know Will has always disagreed with that, but it's within the regulations. It is a mechanism that the commission grants applicants. This is a valid way for us to pursue this. And knowing that we're going to have this intervener a party to every application that we make, we wanted to try to minimize that pain. We wanted to try to make this as painless as possible, because we've already been at this for several months and we only have so much time left, and all it seems to do is just belabor the point. So we tried to make it as streamlined as possible using the mechanisms available to us, and the other alternatives would not have been something that was possible, or would not have been something that was feasible. And
well, I understand where you're coming from now. Thank you. I'll review
Mr.
this
Chairman?
with staff myself.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, if I could
Yes.
just interject, since they are my comments. I have disagreed from the start about this in those meetings, pre-app meetings. I would like to point out that the grading associated with the site plan is associated with the site plan, not associated with a violation, not associated with filling in the entirety of the site, which really is not related to the site plan whatsoever. In fact, the site plan is related in an accessory way to the filling. And that was my other comment about it, is what really is the use here? Are we dealing with a use, or are we dealing with a remediation of the site? Remediation of the site is very different than a site plan application. Remediation is to fill the hole. That's a fill permit. And that's really how those two stand. Regardless of the time frame, the regulations are the regulations. As far as the intervener goes, avoidance of intervener is irrelevant. That is not a way you process through the process of the zoning regulations. To avoid interveners is not a way to proceed. So those are totally irrelevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I mean, you can argue it both ways. I mean, to me, I think one application with several parts might be easy, which are intimately related to each other, versus having 3 separate applications before this commission, not to mention Inland Wetlands Commission, might be the way to go.
I agree with Will. We're here because of a violation. We're not, this is Leon Ambrosi. We're here because of a violation. We're here because the property was over excavated. We're here because there was fill brought into the property, illegally fill put into the property, and we're here because there's wetland violations. That's what this is for. It turned into a site plan, but it basically is here because this commission has to address this site. And this site was way over excavated, like what you're saying, 2.4 million yards. What was the previous approval on this site? What was a previous approval for material to be taken off this site? I think it was 125,000 yards it started off with, to put 2 conceptual buildings in it. And then it turned into being, I don't know, 600,000 yards or 690,000 yards. That turned into 2.4 million yards. That turned into destroyed the wetlands. It turned in that I read some of the minutes of the wetland. It turned in that they don't even know why one of those wetlands depleted. They have no idea why it drained out. Did it drain out because of the blasting? Did it drain out because of what? But nobody's investigated that part of it. So we're here to fix something that should have never happened. And so
Right,
when somebody
Leon.
starts saying that what we're doing,
Right, Leon. Let me just finish my comments. The violation just adds another component, another integral component to this application. If we ever want to get through this application, I don't think we should break it out into 4 or 5 more applications. I think we have enough experts on the panel to be able to get through this application. So
Well,
Like I said, I will talk to
Mike,
staff members.
I have a question.
Leon, I'm still, Leon, can you hold it, please?
Well, because okay.
Thank you. Where was I? All right, so I'm going to talk to staff about if this is the proper application pathway for this applicant. Again, next question I have is on the protocol for bringing in fill going forward. I think you need to concentrate on that as well, what your protocol is going to be. Not just like blanket statements, which we will only accept clean fill, period. Let's get a little more detail on that when you respond to Will's questions also.
Okay.
So those are my big points. The permit type, whether this is the appropriate application. I think you've already defined clean fill and the type of materials you're going to use up to groundwater. I mean, there are other things like loss of vegetation and landscaping, which has to be done too. So rather than go through these comments one by one, I think it'd be better off leaving this to Mr. Sola to comment on and then bring it back to the commission at our next meeting.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. I mean, we do have a very comprehensive material intake protocol, which provides a step-by-step breakdown of what that's going to be. It was included in our submission material, but we're happy to go through that in detail more so in our response and summarize that.
It's been changed a little bit with your change.
Yeah.
So if we could have it all in one place.
Sure.
Including, as Will had mentioned, the training and who's going to inspect it and how it's going to be recorded. You know, we need a little more detail on that aspect.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Panicia. I have one question. When they do come back, can they address also the concerns of the groundwater?
Yes.
Well, again, we can provide a response to that, but again, the groundwater has been tested and it's come up clean. I understand Mr. Glass's point, but we're happy to provide a more comprehensive response. And I'll even have our LEP and hydrogeologist here to offer it as additional professional opinions.
Those are my comments. I'd like to also go to Commissioner Schneider. I don't think we've heard from him. He hasn't had a chance yet.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, and Commissioner Panicia, I didn't mean to leave you out either. Do you have any other comments?
That was it. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go to staff then. Will, do you want to go through your comments any further tonight, or do you want to wait to get written responses?
Well, it's whether you want to go through them really, but there are a few things that I want to highlight. Obviously, the wetlands hearing closed on yesterday, so we still are waiting for their input. There should be input from the health department. The applicant had indicated they were going to follow up with them. They should do that and provide us a status update on that. As I mentioned in comments before, there is a stormwater basin that's from the original subdivision that was compromised, and according to the applicant, that has been reconstructed. I recommend that we get an as-built and a P certification to that reconstruction, and that it is functioning the way it was originally designed. And with those in hand, the town engineer review and report back to you. With regards to the hydrological type studies, obviously there's no one in-house that can review those adequately from a professional point of view. So that's up to you to determine whether you need additional assistance in those regards. With regards to clean fill, you talked about that. There are several grading waivers being requested. Some of them are inherent in the existing conditions of the site. Some are inherent in trying to refix the site. But there's a couple that relate to stormwater basins down in the southeastern end that I don't really see as fully necessary. They should pull those back into the site and reduce or avoid waivers in those areas. With regards to the 10-year period and this 400,000 square foot floor area, I have not had an opportunity to talk with Barbara, as Kevin intimated that there was some analysis of the 10 years. Ultimately, there is 10 years, whether it's 10 years out of the gate or 10 years over time. That is something that I think needs some clarity from legal counsel. We already talked about the permit type. The sign detail was fixed based on our previous comments, and that comment was that it had a mine ID on it, which just goes obviously to the historical point of view that they were operating a quarry in contravention of their approvals. It's unclear if that still exists, if they still hold that permit or license, because again, that is not a permitted use of the site. There are some new aspects that were discussed tonight. The conservation easement. If there is to be a conservation easement, there really should be a resource assessment that documents the characters of the resource, to give the legal basis for the conservation easement. There also should be identification of who will receive that conservation easement. And there should be a draft instrument spelling all that out, and the commission should see all those things as part of the application. The other comments I think are there, but there's another comment that I would make based on some of the discussion tonight. There really isn't any detail on the controls of the intake of material, other than what it may constitute as far as clean fill from the definition of this project. But what really isn't there is the controls that are going to be in place, that they're only taking material in primarily, and when I say primarily, I mean 95, 99%, to put it in the hole. Because you can get a lot of materials and you can separate them out, and it could come out of some materials that are worth selling. Well, that's not filling the hole, but there aren't any real controls about it. It's one thing about taking rebarb out, and that goes into a recycling area, but I'm talking about other types of materials being processed with rock and whatnot, and soil materials, and being separated and selling off good material over time, and only putting some stuff in the hole. There really isn't anything in this application detailing how this is really just to fill the hole. And I think there should be some credible detail if that's exactly what this is. Because again, if it's a processing facility for other purposes, that is not a permitted use in the I2 district. That is all.
Hey, Mike,
Thank you,
it's Bruno.
Mr. Brister.
Mike, it's Bruno. I don't mean to be a pain, but I'm kind of doing some thinking here, and we're hearing about everybody has their own professionals on this stuff, and what about if we had our own? What if we hired our own geologist?
Well, the town has already hired someone. And there is that report, which does have a white paper summary, which is in plain English and pretty easy to interpret. So take a look at that first before we want to consider hiring another expert.
But I'm just saying, just in general for other things. I mean, it doesn't have to be just for that one's. I mean,
we can hire an expert. Yes, that is within our purview.
I was just using that as an example and not as the Bible. I don't know. Sometimes we have two sides having their own professionals, and then we get stuck with trying to figure out who's feeding us a bill of goods and who's trying to get a project stopped instead of what's the actual truth to the matter. Obviously, at the end of the day, I want this damn hole filled, right? I want the hole filled because I'm tired of every meeting hearing about a hole in the ground that needs to get filled. It's getting old. So I'm stressed about a hole in the ground that I could see almost China from. So I would like to
But when you have dueling experts, it pretty much comes down to having lay people like us use common sense and say what makes sense.
No, I agree with you, Michael. I agree with you 100%. I'm just saying sometimes you got these dueling sides, and maybe we hire someone to kind of give us a, hey, yes on this, no on that, yes on this. And I'm not just talking about if they hit the aquifer, because that's pretty obvious they did. Like, I'm just talking about in general on this project, to get some clarity and to get this thing moving in a direction to get this hole filled.
Commissioner Ambrosi is in agreement with Bruno Medini.
What was that?
I'm in agreement with Bruno as far as hiring our own professional, because we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing here.
Listen, I don't want to leave. I think I could speak for most, but I will honestly speak for myself. I don't, at the end of the day, want to make a decision on something and then there be an issue long term, and that kind of stays on and it's not just my record. It's Mike's, it's Nicole's, it's everyone, right? We're a team. We're here together. We want the best for Monroe. I don't ever want to make a mistake that could hurt somebody long term. Is kind of where I stand, even with my frustrations with talking about a hole in the ground every 2 weeks. That's just where I stand, and I just really just hope we can. I just hope we come to some sort of solution to figure this out. That's kind of just all I'm saying.
Thank you, Commissioner Mayini. I'm going to go to the public now.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Joel Green for the intervener.
Yes, go ahead.
So the intervener would just ask for an opportunity to ask some questions of the applicant, following up the commission's questions.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, for the record, Joel Green of the law offices of Green and Gross, representing the intervener. So I haven't, and these are going to be really follow-up questions to the questions the commission asked, and they may not be in the exact order, but I have comments and questions. And the first question I have is, I've heard the applicant state at various times in the course of this hearing and in the course of the hearing before inland wetlands, on one hand, they have stated that they have all of the records of the materials that were brought to the site and all the materials that left the site. I have heard them say that they don't have all of those materials. I heard Mr. Soley say tonight that the calculations that were provided to the commission were based on estimates using elevations and contours. I would like to just first ask the applicant to identify very clearly what the applicant has in terms of documentation of, first, and very discreetly, what are the specific historic documents the applicant has on materials that were brought to the site that reflect the quality of the material and the quantity of the material. Now, there were manifests provided that identify some of the quality of the material or the nature of the material, but very specifically, can the applicant identify the paperwork as to what was brought to the site 2006 through the present? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Soley, do you want to respond to that?
So this is Chris Pulowski for the record, Solely Engineering. Kevin had to step away for a moment, but we do have records. I'm not sure dating back how far. We have submitted all the material manifests that we have, and I am not sure that we have any information beyond that.
So I note that the manifests, through you, Mr. Chair, I note that the manifests don't have any quantity indications on that. I looked at exhibit E03, for example, and maybe I'm misreading it, but it didn't appear to have quantities. Do you have documents that reflect the quantity of each material brought in?
Attorney Green, it's Arnold Karp, one of the managing members of the LLCs. First of all, material has only been brought into this site. As we have continued to hear, 2 million cubic yards seem to have gone out of the site and nobody knew anything about it. But I can tell you that the only time material was brought in, because it was an active quarry, okay, under the town of Monroe, material has only been brought in since 2018. We've provided and will make available again, if you can't find them, all the documentation from Stratford High School or anything else that has come into this site that shows that it is clean. This is the same red herring that you've used at wetlands to try to slow down the process. Anytime you want to see them, they've been made available. They've been sent to your office, I'm rather sure. If not, they're available at town. But when you say since 2006, material was going out for 15 years of this site. Nobody knows how, nobody knows anything. It's interesting, we continue to go back to history, but let's talk about where we are today and what we know is a fact. What we know is a fact that everything that came in has been recorded and has a ticket, okay?
And it's, Mr.
And I
So,
tell you,
Mr.
if
Karp,
it was 12 yards or 10 yards, maybe not, because it gets fluffed, as you know, in construction when you fill a truck. But I am rather sure that we can provide everything that you need. But why is this a planning and zoning issue about what has been brought in? We have heard testimony from an LEP.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Green.
I'm asking some discrete questions. I'm appreciative of Mr. Karp providing the answers. I don't really need the editorial comments. So, Mr. Karp, very specifically, for the material that has been brought to the site, is there a ticket? Is there, aside from the manifest, what is the means by which the quantity or the weight of the material is recorded and stored as a record?
I believe so. I believe that that has been given to you. I believe it is available. If one truck doesn't have the weight, it may be that they know what the weight of the truck was coming in, okay? I'm not sure of what the relevancy of this is. What are you trying to get to?
I'm trying to answer, first of all, is it a
Mr.
ticket?
Green, I think he answered that question. Can you go on to the next question?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking for. I've seen these manifests. They don't appear to have quantities on them.
And I don't believe that we're going to get that because I don't think they've kept those records. But we have seen that the manifest show that the material has been cleaned. So I don't think we're going to get that answer if you, and I mean, you can beat the dead horse or you can move on to the next question.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Ambrosi has asked these questions about the material that was brought to the site. The answer provided tonight that there were 84,900 yards of material brought in. And I think it's appropriate to understand if there's any basis for these figures that have been provided. And it's not that hard.
Yeah, Mr. Green, Chris Pulowski here, Soul Engineering. We calculated those figures based off what Kevin said, previous surveys that we have, and where we know material is stockpiled on site. So those are calculated estimates. They are not based off tickets or any of that information. So,
are there tickets, Mr. Pulowski?
I will defer to Arnold. Yeah. I don't know if that information, I apologize.
Carpet, yes, there are tickets. Would you like us to print out 20 reams of paper to show the tickets? If you can explain to me what that will prove to you, that would be very helpful before we go and kill a forest of trees to prove that we have tickets.
It
What
will
are
help
we trying to get to?
We're trying to figure out the filling that has gone on this site and what materials were used to fill these holes and where it came from.
That is all available, okay? It was available at wetlands, and I'm sure it will be available at planning and zoning.
It was not available at wetlands, Mr. Carp.
Well, I guess you'll have to look a little further. We'll drop off more paper for you. We took a random sampling rather than bringing in literally, it's 18 file draws of tickets. Every truck that went in or out, there is a ticket on, Attorney Green. Could we have misplaced 1%? Absolutely. But every truck had a ticket. They all got weighed, they all got reviewed, and there was a ticket issued for every truck.
And you will make that available to the commission or to the intervener if they ask?
If you will provide help to photocopy 50 or 30 reams of paper, 30 reams of draws, yeah, we'll get you what you need, but I'm still not sure what this has to do with our application.
We'll get to it.
Okay, I'm sure you will.
At the last hearing, Commissioner Ambrosi asked about the stone on the site, and he was concerned about whether it would be used as fill, and there was a discussion about whether it was suitable as fill. And Mr. Soley indicated that he would provide testing on the stone dust. Has that been provided?
That testing has not been completed yet.
So is that in the works?
Not that I'm aware of. The stone dust is a natural byproduct of the rock that was on site when it was crushed. It is clean native material, and that is our position on that.
Yes, we had a long discussion about that at the last hearing, and I watched it again this afternoon. And the applicant indicated that it would provide testing in response to Commissioner Ambrosi's questions. So can we expect that at the next hearing?
Again, we will look into it, but I'm not sure the relevancy of testing stone dust. As I've just stated, it is a natural byproduct of the rock crushing operation that was performed in the previous years.
Yeah, but I asked specific, excuse me, Mr. Green, because this is a Commissioner Ambrosi and I have for Solely Engineering. I asked specifically if stone dust contains silicon and if it was safe to put it in groundwater. Now you're telling me that you're not going to give this commission that answer?
We will look into it.
What does that mean? Are you going to give us that answer or not?
We will provide that answer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We will speak to our licensed engineer to see if there's any reason to test a pile of stone dust, and stone dust is crushed rock.
Now, the next item is
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Can you hold 1 second? Mr. Chairman, I noticed that Rob Westland is now present. Rob, do you know about when you came into the meeting?
I just got here now.
Okay, thank you. It's 8:45. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Soley made a statement, and I just have to get into this just because these sweeping statements have been made. He said earlier tonight twice that, quote, all of the material on the site has been tested. Now, I understand that the applicant is suggesting that its testing protocol, that it claims that its testing protocol has been adequate. I think it's obvious that all of the material has not been tested. It is the applicant's position that their testing protocol is adequate. It is the position of the intervener that the testing protocol for materials that have been brought to the site is inadequate, and I just want the commission to be aware of that as being an issue. Mr. Soley made a comment that the Stratford High School fill was used to fill that hole that you can see on the screen right now, sort of on the in the center of the 4 Independence Drive property. It's on your screen, and you can see some standing water there. It was Mr. Soley's testimony this evening that the Stratford High School materials were used to fill that area. And Mr. Soley, can you please identify how you know that the Stratford High School fill was used to fill that hole and when that occurred?
I believe Mr. Soley is not here currently. Maybe Chris can answer it, but why don't we wait for Mr. Soley and have you ask that question of him?
Mr. Karp, was that done while you were a principal of the owner of the property?
No.
So
Mr.
it was
Chairman,
done by the
this is Dominic Panicia. Can I ask a question? Why are these people rebuttaling back and forth? All these questions should be brought up to the commission, and then the commission and staff should answer all these things. I'm not understanding what's going on.
The applicant is allowed to respond to questions from the intervener if they wish to do so. But they're not required to, and then they have so far responded. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, so Mr. Karp, that was not done while you owned the property, or while the companies that you were the principal of own the property. Is that correct?
I'm the managing member of the 2 LLCs that currently own the property. I do not believe that was done during our time period, but I think that's a question for Kevin. And the relevancy of this would be?
We'll get to that, Mr. Karp. And you don't know, are you aware of any information as to the quantity of the Stratford High School fill that went into the hole on that portion of the site?
I believe that would be a question for Kevin, because I believe
Mr. Green, of the manifests that were provided, the Stratford High School debris manifests were included in that. And again, I would just like to state, I'm not sure of the relevancy of this.
And I saw that, but I did not see the quantity of the material that came in from the Stratford High School materials. And so that was done under the previous ownership of the site, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, this is Pat Sullivan representing the applicant. This is not a deposition, and Mr. Green has taken a lot of time, and if he's got questions, then he can submit them and we can respond to them as appropriate. But his intervention has to do with how is what the applicant is proposing harming the environment. That's a 22A19 intervention. He's claiming to be that this is an intervention and that he's trying to protect the environment. And now he's asking Mr. Karp, did he put the stuff from Stratford High School, which he's not saying is causing any damage to the property or to the environment? Or did somebody else do that? Again, not saying how that's having any harm to the environment. So we're going way far afield of what the Planning and Zoning Commission should be discussing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I really disagree with council, and I understand their reluctance to answer these questions. I am representing an intervener on an environmental intervention to protect the air, water, and natural resources of the state. I'm not going to take up any more time. I do respect the commission's time. I guess the last comment I would like to make was the comments by the applicant regarding my client's purpose in being here. And I just think I should comment in sort of the exasperation expressed by Mr. Soley by our intervening, and the exasperation by Attorney Sullivan apparently is that everyone seems to be ignoring the history of this site, the condition of this site, the reckless and intentional conduct that went on this site. And my client, as the owner of over 100 acres of property that directly abuts this property is not here because for sport or entertainment. He's here because he has a serious concern in looking at the picture on the screen, a justifiable concern as to what is happening on a neighboring property that he has a significant interest in. And I just hope that the commission bears that in mind. And my questioning of the applicant is not casual or also for sport, but we will be getting to the issues that support our intervention. And certainly the nature and extent of the filling these areas with fill that we have significant concerns about go directly to the basis of our intervention. And interestingly, we were sort of steered off of the about these filling issues at inland wetlands by suggesting, it was suggested by the applicant that this is a planning and zoning issue. So we are here at planning and zoning to have our concerns aired. The last piece, and the last thing I'll say this evening before I wish you all happy holidays, is Mr. Soli referred to Mr. DiRienzo and sort of lauded him as being a qualified hydrogeologist, which we agree. And this commission should recognize that Mr. DiRienzo opined that this plan by the applicant has only a 30% chance of success in terms of the applicant's goal of rehydrating wetlands on the site. So certainly Mr. DiRienzo has significant concerns. And I really think that this commission should seriously consider retaining a consultant to interpret the opinions of interested consultants. Now, I have the utmost respect for both of the hydrogeologists that are already involved with this, being WSP and Mr. Glass, and but I think ATRA, but I really think that it is helpful to the commission to have a professional guide. And it was a decision that was also thought long and hard about by the Inland Wetlands Commission. It is a cost that would be borne by the applicant. It is a cost that would be borne by the applicant that stands greatly from this project by importing this fill for a fee, by the way, and then having a developable site. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not significant. So my last word would be having that guidance has proven to be, I would say, invaluable to the Inland Wetlands Commission. I certainly want to thank you all for your generous patience this evening. We look forward to addressing the commission again on our intervention, and I would be remiss if I didn't wish you all joyous and safe holidays and a happy and healthy new year.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are there other members of the public that would like to comment on this application tonight?
Mr. Chairman, if I may say one thing. On behalf of the applicant, Chris Pulowski again here for the record. We are against hiring additional experts. We have hired WSP and they have done a thorough analysis on the site and then it's come back clean and they have tested it. So we don't believe that additional experts are necessary at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, are there any other members of the public here tonight that would like to comment on this application? Please identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I am not a member of the public, but I would like to address the commission briefly, but I'll wait until you've been able to canvass the members of the public first.
You can go ahead and identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Steve Finn. I am the attorney for the applicants, but I represented them before the Inland Wetlands Commission. I can certainly speak to some of Mr. Green's misconceptions about what transpired there. First of all, I do want to point out that Mr. Ambrosi and I'm going to apologize for using your first name, Bruno, because I couldn't catch your last name, but their concern about an expert had to do with the water flow and how it might go through the bedrock. And Mr. DiRienzo, who was an independent expert hired by the Inland Wetlands Commission, is a hydrogeologist. That is his area of expertise. and he rendered an opinion to the Inland Wetlands Commission, an independent opinion, that there were no concerns about contaminants at this site or with regard to groundwater being contaminated, which would generate any concern. So I do think that with regard to an independent hydrogeologist, that's already been satisfied for the town of Monroe through Mr. Diorenzo. Now, with respect to Mr. Green's comment about the chances of the inland wetlands plan that we submitted rehydrating the wetlands, that is, with all respect, that is an issue for the Inland Wetlands Commission. We've argued and we submitted significant evidence that we think the plan has a great chance of success. And if it's not successful, then we haven't remediated the violation and we may have to do more. But the fact that that plan may not succeed in the view of some is not a basis for denying a planning and zoning application. That may be a basis for something for the Inland Wetlands Commission to address, but it's certainly not an issue for this commission. And I do have some resentment over Mr. Green trying to throw all these applications before both commissions together as if your commission has jurisdiction over inland wetlands. I know you don't. I know you don't. But you know, he's just trying to throw stuff up on the wall that is not really relevant. So those are my 2 points for tonight. I want to thank you for the time for allowing me to address you. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Finn. Now I'd like to go back to any members of the public that would like to comment on this application tonight.
Michael,
Are there any members of the public that would like to comment tonight?
Yes, Michael, this is Karen Bernaska. I chair the Conservation Commission. Will this hearing, you're not going to close it this evening, are you?
No, we're not going to close the hearing tonight.
Okay. I believe that the Conservation Commission would like to present comments to you, and we will do so after our January meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to those comments. Are there any other members of the public here tonight that would like to comment on this application? If not, then I'd like to go back to Mr. Solly for any concluding remarks.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. This is Joel Green. I just have may I just bring one item to the attention of the commission for
one item,
consideration?
Mr. Green. One item, Mr. Green.
I would urge the commission to review the language of section 6.4.3 that's 6.4.3 of the regulations. And I think that I would urge the commission to have the town attorney look at that section, and certainly the applicant, and perhaps at the commencement of the next hearing, the parties can present their conclusions on whether this application is properly before the commission. It's something that should be looked at. It suggests that this section suggests that the approval of the Inland Wetlands Commission must be received prior to the application. And by its language.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Mr. Solly, do you have concluding remarks for tonight?
You're muted.
We can't hear you, Kevin.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry for that. Just to Mr. Green's point for section 6.4.3, that is a regulation specific to an excavation or a filling permit application. This application before the commission is not a filling permit application, it is a site plan application. And that follows the standard rule of order where, you know, an application has to be submitted to wetlands prior to submission to planning and zoning, which was followed here. But this is not a filling permit application. So while I'm not an attorney, I would argue that that does not apply here because that is a specific requirement associated with a fill permit application. But I'll certainly defer to town attorney and our counsel as well, but that's just one comment. I just want to make another point, you know, regarding the discussion regarding additional independent third parties and things like that. I think we have to come back to the discussion that this application has been before this commission since September, and we have statutory timeframes and deadlines, but this commission has to proceed with and close a public hearing. So I'd only caution that if the commission is considering trying to do something like that, they need to understand and recognize the timing associated with such, and that we are running on fumes, so to speak, with how much time is left in the processing of this application. And I'd ask staff to chime in with what their understanding of the calendar is. And frankly, I think this commission, we know we have to submit a response to comments again, which we're happy to do before the next meeting. But we also understand that, if there's anything else that this commission needs to see or wants, which we know there's a list from this evening, we're running out of time to provide that. And either this commission would need to consider holding additional special meetings to process everything, or we're going to be running up against a deadline here.
Thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up, because I wanted to bring that up as well. We are running out of time. And that is some of the pitfalls of the state statute process, where there are timelines and they're restricted based on when you have multiple applications. It's very difficult when they run simultaneously. Nonetheless, we are where we are. We've got extra time over the course of this review only because of the unfortunate emergency situation going on in the world. But my calculation is we would be ending sometime in the end of January under the clock. All time from us, all time from the emergency, all time from the applicant. There would be maybe some additional time depending on when the Inland Wetlands Commission renders a decision. So that obviously is still in flux, but cautious, as I agree with Kevin. We are running out of time, and at best we have 2 meetings that I think would fall under our calendar. And in a way, you really have 1, depending on how you want to close, and then render a decision in writing and have that at another meeting. So special meetings might be appropriate or necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Sully. Any other remarks?
No, just, we're just to remind the commission, we're here trying to fix a problem. We're here trying to fill a hole that was caused by somebody else. And there are all kinds of concerns about that hole and how it got there, and we're just as concerned as you are. There's concern about what's gone in that hole, and we've done exhaustive testing, and an LEP has provided information that it's well below any regulatory criteria. This is an application to fix an issue, to allow a site to move forward and to push forward and to progress forward. I just wanted to remind the commission of that, as we're certainly trying to do our best to do that and to address a problem that took place in the past, to figure out how to move forward. So we'll have some additional information, and we'll go through some additional detail regarding the protocol for how material would come in, and some of the other questions raised tonight. And we, I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, because we won't see you again before the first of the year, and look forward to a much better 2021 than what we had in 2020. So thank you.
Kevin,
Thank you, Mr. Sully.
Kevin, will you be able to make the December 29th deadline?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to adjourn the hearing for tonight.
Mike, hold on, Mike. This is Commissioner Ambrosi. I think we should poll the commission and find out, because Bruno was concerned about it getting professional. I was concerned about it getting professional, and I would like to see how the other members on the commission would like to look at getting a professional to look into this for our informational.
So Will, would that be appropriate at this point to poll the commission?
Yeah, because if you're going to do it, you got to do it.
All right, so we could start with me, and I do not think that we need another professional. Like I said before, we have enough professional opinions. What we need now are prudent, non-professional residents of the town of Monroe to look at the findings that are written in clear English These white papers are not written in legalese. They're not written in technical language. They're in English. I believe all of us have the education to evaluate these clearly written expert opinions. I mean, how many do we really need?
Well, Mike, I don't know, and I don't think you know, what is the appropriate material to put in a groundwater site, in a GAA site? I wouldn't know that. I don't think you know that. And I don't believe anybody else on the commission knows that. And so I think that we need to know those answers before we allow certain fill to be put on this property. That's my opinion.
DEEP does have regulations for that, but I'm just taking a vote now. I'm going to vote no. I'm going to go to Commissioner Maini.
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Condon.
I'm a no.
Commissioner Westland.
I think at this point, a special meeting should be in order so we could dig down on this a little bit deeper and find out exactly what we need to know about what's going in there, how it could affect the groundwater. I'm leaning towards no, but I'd like to have some more information on this.
So you're going to abstain for now?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Panici.
I'm on no, and I'll tell you why I'm on no. A professional opinion only depends on it goes on the facts. And having the same facts, we're going to have another professional opinion giving you the same facts. So I'm a no.
Commissioner Lupo.
I'm torn because I feel that we need to know more. I think it'd be beneficial, and I kind of agree with Rob that having a special meeting to talk about what exactly we want from this person. But I think if I have to say yes or no, I'm going to say yes.
And let's see. I don't think we heard from Commissioner Schneider.
You did it. I'm always last. Hey. I think my biggest concern with this place is that it was like when it was purchased, it was business as usual. And then they didn't stop when we said they stopped. So my concern is what they brought in, as well as what they're going to bring in the future. And I don't know, who am I to say who went in there? Who hired them to go in there? Because
who hired who?
Who hired the people to go in there and test it that said it was okay?
The town.
The town did. All right. So it's not like the person who owned the property, and the town already did that?
No,
One of the experts was hired by the town. Not all.
The applicant, I'll just offer some data. The applicant engaged WSP to go in and do extensive testing. The town of Monroe hired Russ Dorenzo, LEP, as part of the wetland process, who reviewed all of that and was very adamant that the testing was sufficient and that no further testing was required. I'd at least, if it's not part of the record for planning and zoning, I'd at least ask the commission to seek out, or we'll be happy to submit that from Mr. Dorenzo and Arcadis, because that was part of his conclusion. And so I think that did take place. There was a step that happened there that the town did engage Arcadis to do that analysis.
Kevin, I believe Mr. Renzo said that we were the ones that should be worried about the fill, not inland wetlands. That we should be worried how to fill that hole.
Mr. Schneider.
He also
Commissioner Schneider, you have the floor.
So yeah, that's what was that person who went in there as maybe not as aggressive as Leon, but said, all right, what about this hole over here? Let me test that hole. Did they test everything everywhere to make sure? Do we really need to do it again?
You saw the evidence presented and the written reports. That's something you have to determine on your own.
Yeah, but it seems like everybody keeps coming up with something else. Like tonight it was about asphalt. I think it was always the rock dust, and now it's asphalt and what went in there and how, and nobody seems to know. And obviously, if it was something illegal, they're not going to put it on paper and say, all right, yeah, we dumped a bunch of bad stuff, take it on, new owner. So we're not going to know that. The only way we're going to be sure is by testing it. I'd have to see about the other test to see if it's good enough for me. I would agree that just like Leon said tonight, to be 100% sure because it's on us to have another test. I don't see it being that big of a deal to make sure that what is there isn't going to ruin the town later, and then be that much more aggressive about what's brought in the next time to make sure that that's not going to ruin the town. This property this is something different than anything else. And it's a in my eyes. So I would lean more yes.
All right, so it sounds like there is some inclination towards hiring another expert. I think that we need to have a special meeting to determine whether in fact to go forward with this and exactly what kind of material or what kind of information we're looking for. So we'll direct staff to poll the commissioners for availability for a special meeting.
Hey, Mike, is that something we could do in subcommittee or no? Or we need everybody there for it?
You need to do it as part of the application with the commission.
Right.
So everybody needs.
Yes.
Is there any reason we can't do it tonight?
No, I guess there isn't.
I'd just like to offer for the commission's consideration, it's December 17th. Next week is Christmas. The following week is New Year's Eve. And there's a meeting the following Thursday, and then one more meeting after that. The likelihood that the commission can engage and hire a consultant who can do this work and have it back in time with adequate time for us as the applicant to also review and opine, and the intervener's applicant to review and opine, I think that's problematic.
Well, we need to
frankly,
talk
if this
about
commission
this
and if this commission wanted to do this, this is the third public hearing for this application that started in September.
We need to talk about this further into what we would like a consultant. What do we want them to tell us? We need to get down to more specifics as to what we would want a consultant to tell us. He's not going to tell us which way to vote, if that's what you're looking for. Excuse me. So I think the commissioners need to realize you bear some responsibility here in making decisions. And you're not going to hire someone else who's going to come in and tell you how to vote.
No, I don't want anybody to tell me how to vote, Mike. What I want to know is I see on that site where test holes or borings were bored. In other parts of the site, there is no borings. And so I asked Kevin specifically if any borings were put into those other holes, and where he's telling me that's native material. How do I know that's native material? I don't know that. His commission doesn't know that, nor does anybody know that. And then now all of a sudden, now we read in the intervener states that there was asphalt down there. We don't know how much asphalt's down there. We don't know how much is bleeding down there. We have no idea what's in those holes because he didn't, Mr. Karp, according to Mr. Karp, he didn't put it in the hole. Somebody else put it in the hole. So how would he even know what's in the hole? That's where I'm at. And I don't want somebody's water supply getting destroyed in this town if I don't know what's in all those holes. And then
This is Attorney Warren for the applicant. If I can help here, I'm not going to get into a debate with Mr. Glass about how much testing is sufficient. I'll just tell you that, you know, in accordance with professional standards, our licensed environmental professional sampled the soil and the groundwater. Some asphalt fragments were found in the soil. It's part of the definition of clean fill. There's no asphalt disposal in this, but asphalt fragments are allowed under the definition of clean fill, and you're going to find them in every scoop of fill. Having said that, if it were just the applicant's consultant and just the intervener's consultant, it would be difficult for you, but you'd have to weigh the experts. But the town has engaged Arcadis, an international environmental consulting firm. Russ Dorenzo is a hydrogeologist and a licensed environmental professional. He reviewed the interveners' environmental reports. He reviewed the applicant's environmental report. The town's consultant determined that the testing was sufficient, that the samples complied with standards, and that no further sampling was warranted. So the town has an independent expert, and I'll just remind you also that if you put this out to competitive bid and wanted to retain your own consultant, I know with the Wetlands Commission that took several weeks to issue an RFP, to get responses, to interview consultants, to get costs, and then the work starts, and it takes weeks to drill soil borings and drill wells and let the wells settle and collect samples, and you won't have the results in time. You just won't have any sampling results in time. So I think with the town's expert having reviewed all this, you're in good hands. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Reilly, if I may, Attorney Finn, I just want to, I have the opinion letter from Mr.
Chairman O'Reilly, please, Mr. Green. Will, I'd like to ask you a question about the timeline.
Yeah.
What happens when the time runs out?
Well, we're not going to let the time run out. You're going to eventually render a decision. You're going to close this hearing and render some decision, because otherwise we could be in other problems.
Then we can't really hire another expert and get him in time that we can render a decision.
I think it would likely be very difficult to do that.
Is it impossible to do that?
If you want to include testing and all that, because I believe we also have to go through town council to get approval to actually engage in a contract, and that's to their timeframes as well. So I think it would be quite a challenge at this point in the time to do that. That's unfortunate, but it is the truth. And the other problem at the moment is there's a lot of snow on the ground, and that doesn't help the conditions of trying to do any testing or looking at existing conditions either.
Hey, Mike, it's Bruno. I do feel that we need, I do feel we need more information, right? I do feel that trying to go the expert way is probably not going to work, being a time frame and to be fair to everyone, that if we do hire somebody, we're not going to get the information back in time, and then we're going to go ahead and try to make the same decision currently that we're going to have to make in a month. And we're still not going to have the information due to snow, time frame, getting approval from council, town of Monroe wanting to spend money, blah, 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 blah. So I feel that even though I do feel I need more information and I do want an expert, I do feel we need to make a decision ourselves at this point, because we're not going to get the information back in time, and that's not fair to everyone.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Reilly, it's Attorney Finn.
That's already scheduled, Bruno.
Mr.
So we
Chairman.
will be able to get more information at that hearing.
Mr. O'Reilly, may I address the commission just briefly?
And Mike,
May I
it's
be
Bruno
heard?
again. Mike, I think we need to talk. I think we need to talk as a commission when nobody else from the public can talk either. So I hope we can close. We can put this to the side and let the public talk to themselves so that the commission can talk, because I'm, to be honest, getting a little aggravated with all this. So I would like us to talk amongst ourselves.
Will, I don't think the commission can have a private meeting. Isn't that correct?
No, we
That's
can't have
correct.
a private. Excuse me. The question was
Everything has to be part of
question
the
was
public
directed to
hearing
me.
process.
Oh, sorry,
Right.
Barbara. Go ahead. Sorry, Barbara.
No, I am affirming what Mike said, what the chairman said. Everything regarding this application has to be part of the public hearing. until the commission decides that it's time to close the public hearing and start deliberating on the application. So you can't have a side meeting or a special meeting that just involves the commission without the public.
But what the commission can do if it wants to, during the hearing, have some discussion and not let anybody else speak until you're done with that discussion. And when you're done with that discussion, then you can go back to for comments if you want.
Well, let's have that discussion now.
Then let's
Well,
do
that's
it.
what I'm trying to do.
But the discussion
Chairman.
should be about your concerns and questions and thoughts. It should not be any way in rendering decision or filing conclusions or anything like that. That is something left for deliberations.
Mr. Chairman, Mike, can I ask Attorney Green one question before we move into that section?
Yes, go ahead.
Attorney Green, where can I find the regulations that speak to the results being found as no contamination above the state regulation? Where can I find that to read over exactly what the state deems a safe level of contamination?
I would defer to Mr. Glass on that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure who was
But
talking about that, but
Mr. Chairman, I just have a brief solution for you. If you just hear me out for 15
I think
seconds.
someone should answer Commissioner Lupo's question first.
yes, please.
I think you were asking, Edmund Glass, from Malt Environmental. I think you were asking where can you find the cleanup standards?
Right, I want to be able to read the state regulations where it says what is considered safe contamination.
That would be the remediation standard regulations.
Okay.
A quick solution, Mr. Chairman.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Attorney Green.
Thank you. Thank you for just quickly. I think the commission can ask an expert to just do a peer review. Our hydrogeologist will submit a report. The applicant's hydrogeologist submits a report. No holes need to be dug. We would have a peer review done. Arcadis was able to do something like that in just 9 or 11 days the last time. There is time to get that done, and they don't have to do any invasive work at the site. They can look at the information, they can provide the commission with an opinion, and then it's up to the commission to make its findings. And I think that's the solution, and it can be done, and it's not that expensive, it's not that time consuming, and I don't think it should be overthought.
Mr. O'Reilly, I'd like to also have 15 seconds if I might. This is Attorney Finn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, as Attorney Warren indicated, there is a report from Arcadis, the independent hydrogeologist hired by the Inland Wetlands Commission, that came to the conclusion that there will not be water flowing off this site impacting the watershed in any manner whatsoever. So you already have an independent expert who's come to that conclusion. In addition, I want to try to give you all commissioners peace of mind. And the additional peace of mind is that Aquarian Water Company got notice of the inland wetlands application. And my guess is they got a notice of this application. They came to the site, they inspected the site. They are in charge of preserving our drinking water, making sure it's safe. And they have not registered any issues or made any complaints or raised any concerns about the plan submitted by the applicant. I would think that's enough peace of mind for all of you to think that we should move forward and talk about the real substance of this application. I don't see the basis for any concerns when you have two independent entities, an independent hydrogeologist hired by the town and Aquarian, who've raised no issues about these concerns.
And
Thank
the
you very much.
DEP.
Thank you, Mr.
Hey,
Finn.
Mr. Finn, it's Commissioner Maini.
Yes.
If this was happening next to your home, would you be comfortable drinking the water?
Absolutely, without a doubt, Mr. Maini. We've got the testing, we've got the independent hydrogeologist.
Actually, it was just a yes or no question. That's all it was.
All right, I'm going to limit the rest of the conversation at this point to the commissioners. So we have Commissioner Westland, Commissioner Schneider that expressed a desire for another expert. I'd like to hear from them again as to what information they would like to see that hasn't been provided by the two opposing experts and the one that was hired by the town of Monroe.
Commissioner Westland here. I can appreciate and understand Commissioner Ambrosie's concern on the fill that's in this site. At this point, I feel like the applicant has done his due diligence as far as getting experts involved. And I feel like we've beaten this matter into oblivion. And at this point, I don't feel like we need any more testing or any more peer reviews or any more opinions. We need to take the information that's in front of us, kind of dissect it, decide what we're going to do, and make a decision. We've come to that point, and I don't think that we need any more testing or any more nights discussing this.
All right, well, as I read it, the preponderance of the commissioners is not in favor of hiring another expert. Is that correct, Will?
I had that tally. Let me go back to that. Hold on. It is now 4-4.
Bruno, were you a yes or a no?
I was a yes.
Are you still a yes, or?
I still am a yes, but for the testing that I want, it's not going to happen in time. So, I mean, I'm just going to have to take the information that we have.
So Mike, why don't we have somebody just review it for us? Can't we hire a professional, Will, just to review it?
Bruno, is that still a yes or a no? We're taking a tally now.
I said for what I want is not going to happen. So unfortunately, I would rather have a review than I would at least minimum would like to have a review.
All right, Commissioner Lupo.
I'm still a yes, and I agree with Commissioner Maini that additional testing I don't think is needed. I think, to be fair to the applicant as well, I think it's just too much time, but I would like a peer review done.
All right, Will, what's the tally?
Well, you got Mahini, Ambrosi, and Nicole with a yes. You got Dominic, Ryan, and yourself and Rob with a no. Ron was, I believe, for the most part, a yes previously, so you may want to ask Ron.
Ron, are you still in favor of attempting to hire a consultant?
It's got to be left up to me, right? You got to do this to me.
No, I think it's, what's the tally? Is it 4-3 right now, Will?
Oh, yeah,
Well,
so I'll make it
It was
even.
4-4, Ron being the 4 on the yes. But if he changes his mind or is a no, that would be.
So here's the problem I have is I don't like being told that we can't do what we want to do because we don't have enough time. Well, that's too bad is my view on that. But at the same time, after hearing what somebody said about who and what was tested and how extensive it was, I mean, are we still beating a dead horse? So I almost tend to lean more towards the let's just move on from now, and that we don't need the test. I would love the test, just like Maini said, I would love the test, but we can't do the test because we don't have the time. Well, that kind of puts us in a little bit of a pickle. But if we had a review, what are they going to find? We're going to review the paperwork that they didn't find anything before. Are we just looking for Russian collusion again? You know what I mean? I think I'm going to turn my vote towards no.
And, you know, a peer review is not going to tell you how to vote. Again, he's going to pretty much sum up what we've already seen.
Right,
You're
exactly.
going to have to make a decision on your own here at some point.
I understand that the decision has to be made by us individually, But to say that the peer review guy is not going to tell you anything different is to me is crazy. How many times do we look? How many times you see cases get changed all the time because somebody else found something that was missed by somebody else? That's just insanity to say that somebody else could look at it and find nothing.
We already had a peer review, though. The town did one. My concern is that we're just looking for the answer that some of our commissioners want. Are we going to keep looking? What happens if that next peer review doesn't give us the answer that you want?
Because the next one is the last one. The
Is
next
it?
one, there is no next one after that one.
I think the last one was the last one.
That's my opinion. The town had a peer review. They gave us an answer. Just because people don't like that answer,
If we have our answers, let's close this tonight and let's go to a vote and see how that works.
But
Leon wanted to know what the dust was made of. I think we have to wait for that.
Well, basically, there's certain materials and dust that you can put in and stuff like that. For a perfect example, okay, I know for a fact because I'm on a transfer site in my business, okay, and then this year they changed the regulations to check for different contaminants in the groundwater. So I have to pay again to have my groundwater tested again because the state has changed the regulations because they made them stricter. So their regulations change all the time. The question I have is that we never talked to an expert. Inland Wetlands has talked to the expert. We had no questions to give to the expert. We know none of that information, and yet we're making a decision on that we're going to put in the ground. I don't know that. I don't think Bruno knows that. And I don't know if anybody else knows that. But in order to make a decision for what we do, we should have somebody review it and give us an answer on if we're doing the right thing.
All right, Leon, I think I have a solution. Will.
Yeah.
Can we get the engineer that the town had hired to our next meeting for
Yeah,
questions?
that's something that I was going to potentially suggest, and I would like some input from Barbara. He was not retained by the P&Z per se. He is retained by the town through the town council from inland wetlands. Do you think it's possible for us to invite him to our meeting and to keep him aboard in that respect?
I don't know. I'm going to have to review the regulations. I'm not sure that you can do that. I certainly think you can review the report. But yeah, I'm not sure that just because he was hired by inland wetlands under the P&Z regulations that you can just now basically use him as your own expert. I think there's a protocol you have to go through from, I mean, normally you would get estimates. It's an unusual situation. I'm sorry. I can't give you an answer on that without reviewing the regulations.
So what you're saying is
I'm happy to do.
You don't believe he can come to us and answer a couple questions or just talk about what he found? He can't do that? I want his job. That's pretty awesome.
I'm sorry. I just don't know the answer.
If I can write a report, I don't have to answer any questions to anybody about it. That's pretty great.
Did he provide testimony at the wetlands meeting?
He did. He did provide that testimony.
So our commissioner.
Commissioner Maini, I'm not suggesting that an expert normally can just provide a report without answering questions. The issue is whether this commission can basically take on as its own expert, an expert that was hired by another commission. That's something different.
That's not a commission that's in the town of Monroe?
I was suggesting, Barbara, is there a way, I know you have to look at this, but is there a way to fast track him under our processes? Because he's already a known commodity. He already has a standing contract with the town. it's with the town. It's not necessarily with inland wetlands. Yes, I get there's a vetting of the process under the statute. But if that's something you could look into, that perhaps that we could fast track that so that he could come to the commission meeting, and that would sort of be the limited extent of his services at the point in time.
I'm happy to look into that and get back to the commission on that.
Okay, would that satisfy you, Commissioner Ambrosi, if we had the independent town hired expert that you can question?
Yeah, that would satisfy me.
All right, is there anyone else that would not satisfy them? All right, then let's try to move forward with that, Barbara.
Okay, will do.
All right, and as soon as you can get back to us, the better. And if there aren't any further comments or questions, then I would like to adjourn this hearing.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When is the next meeting, and what would a deadline be for the applicant and the intervener to submit their final reports? And what evening should the intervener have its consultants present?
Will, can you let him know?
Yeah.
I get it Thursday. Sorry, go ahead.
Kevin, the next meeting is January 7th. The deadline is December 29th, 4 o'clock. That's a Tuesday. As far as when you can do it, you could have done it before tonight.
All right, with that, we're going to adjourn this hearing. Thank you. Going to move on. We have another site development plan, SDP 2020-04, file number 144, which has been postponed by the applicant to the January 21st meeting. We have minutes to approve. Does everyone have the November 19th and the minutes? The chair will entertain a motion to accept the November 19th minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted for November 19th, 2020.
Have a motion, have a second, we'll call the roll. Mayini?
Yes, sir.
Condon?
Yes.
Ambrosi?
Yes.
Westland?
Yes.
Snyder?
But you don't need Snyder. You gotta do the 5 members, please.
Oh, O'Reilly, yes. I thought he was listed on there.
Yeah, they're at the meeting, but when you vote, it's only the 5 members or 5 seated members. And Robert was seated when he came into the meeting in place of.
We have 5 yeses then.
Yep.
Everyone have a copy of the December 3rd minutes? The chair will entertain a motion to accept the December 3rd minutes as drafted.
I make a motion to accept December 3rd, 2020 minutes as drafted.
Second.
Chair has a motion and a second. Mayini?
Yes, sir.
Condon?
Yes.
Ambrosi?
Yes.
Westland?
Yep.
And O'Reilly, yes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is deliberations. We have 2 approvals. If I can find them here. Oh, all right. One is the RAA 2020-06 outdoor display. At our last meeting, we directed staff to draft an approval of this text amendment. Are you all familiar with that text amendment?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to ask for a vote.
Or a
You wanna
motion.
Summarize it, Mike?
The motion, Mike.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but I can't really,
Would you like me to do it?
yeah, would you please?
Okay, so there's a draft resolution in front of you for zoning regulations text amendment RAA 2020-06, file 1013E. The adoption date would be tonight, December 17, 2020, with an effective date of December 29, 2020. It's an application to amend the zoning regulations, amending sections 2.21, 10.1, and 10.2 with regards to the definition and use of outdoor sales of accessory play equipment and sheds to expand the definition. This affects uses in the B1, B2, and the LR district. Notices and referrals for the public hearing of the application were made to the municipal surrounding towns as well as the regional planning agencies with no negative comments. It also was referred to Aquarium Water and the Public Health Commission with no comments. Findings, the commission would find favorable in adopting the amendments because they would, the findings would be, it does not diminish or change applicable lot area and bulk standards, will not result in additional burden of town services and infrastructure, provide a means of positive economic change to the benefit of the areas, is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning regulations, will not adversely affect community, health, safety, convenience, or property values, and is consistent with the goals, objectives, and recommendations of the POCD, and that it will maintain good quality of life through proper administration and regulation of land uses, and would update permitted land uses consistent with current trends and needs of the town.
Chair will accept the motion to approve RA 2020-06.
I make a motion to approve RAA 2020-06, file number 1013E as drafted.
Second.
Chair has a motion and a second. I'll call the roll on this. We have Commissioner Mayini,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Condon,
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrosi,
Yes.
Commissioner Westland,
Yes.
and O'Reilly, yes.
5-0 approved. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is RA 2020-05, file number 1012E, mixed use development. This is our mixed use development text amendment, which I hope everyone is familiar with. Will, do you want to summarize this also for?
Sure.
those-
Zoning regulations text amendment RAA 202-005, file 1012E. The adopted date would be today, December 17, 2020, with an effective date of December 29, 2020. The amendment was sent to the town of Trumbull, and there was no response. It was sent to the Connecticut Municipal Council of Governments, responding not a regional significant change. It was also referred to the Public Health Department and the Aquarium Water Company with no responses. It was a public hearing. It was published in Voices appropriately. The public hearing was held several sessions. If adopted, the resolution would adopt the text amendments which deal with an introduction of mixed-use development into existing B1 and B2 zones located south of Knollwood to the boundary of Trumbull, with regulations they're covering. And the findings are that it would not change or diminish the applicable lot area or bulk standard, will allow mixed-use development, find diversity of compatible uses, would encourage investment and renovation of underutilized and underperforming commercial properties while encouraging development of new mixed facilities, providing positive economic impacts. Amendment would provide a means of positive economic change to the benefit of existing property development in the surrounding areas. The amendment is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning regulations. The amendment will not adversely affect community health, safety, convenience, or property values. The amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, recommended POCD as set forth above, in that they would maintain a good quality of life through the proper administration and regulation of land uses, update permitted land uses consistent with current trends and needs of the town, and provide alternative and device housing types while also requiring affordable housing options.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve RAA 2020-05.
I make a motion to approve RAA 2020-05, file number 1012E as drafted.
Second.
Chair has a motion and a second. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Mayini,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Condon,
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrosi,
Yes.
Commissioner Westland,
Yes.
and Commissioner O'Reilly is a yes.
5-0 is approved.
Now deliberate on SCP 2020-04, file number 1623A. That is the non-conforming use extension. This is the application that we heard earlier this evening. The chair will entertain a motion to grant this application.
Mr. Chairman, this is an SEP, and you are required to make certain findings, and I do recommend that you do that in a draft.
Right, that's what I meant, to direct the staff to draft an approval.
I make a motion.
You don't need a motion, you can just have a consensus.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes. Yes.
We're all yeses, great.
Write it up.
All right, so regulations review work session, we haven't had any correspondence. There doesn't seem to be any commissioner reports. I'm going to hold mine for the end. We have a report on the PCOD, I believe, from Rick.
Yep, the commission met last Monday, and they finalized the vision statement, which is an important component. They also discussed the goals, 7 goals, which include economic development, housing, facilities and services, transportation and infrastructure, and environmental resources. Each goal was discussed independently, allowing members of the committee to suggest specific facets of the goal that they would like to see. Francisco now is finalizing that. We do, however, need to continue with the discussion. So staff is going to come up with some dates in January. As the commission is aware, you have a lot of meetings coming forward. So please all look at your calendars and advise staff what works for you. And then we'll continue.
Thank you. Is that it, Rick?
That's it for the PLCD.
So I just want to say something. You know, I mean, as a chairman, I don't know if my role here is a teacher or what, but it's apparent to me that some of the commissioners are not reading the materials that is being sent out to them. I mean, it's obvious from the questions you're asking, that's clearly answered in these materials. And then, you know, I mean, I don't care if you don't read the material, but please don't come to this meeting and waste our time with questions that are already answered. And don't ask for an outside reviewer to read the material for you and make a decision for you. Please read the material, or else don't throw a wrench into the works at the meeting.
Well, Mike, I'm not throwing a wrench into the works.
No, I'm not talking about you, Leon, in particular. I know I'm talking about reading the material. I'm not asking questions that's not, I mean, you ask questions that's not in the material.
Right. Okay.
I mean, but I think I'm not the only one that feels this way. Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
A motion and a second. Thank you for your participation.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.